Welcome back. Okay, so the Chicago Blackhawks. This is the final recording I'm doing for one of the Western teams, so I'll at least have the Western Conference done before we leave. All right, so for Chicago, their overall record 15, 29, and 4, and this is kind of what was expected. And yet, it's funny when you're going into a season going, okay, we're in a rebuild, it's still difficult to watch, isn't it? So the highest ranking they've had on the power rankings is 19th, and it's because they had a better start than expected. The lowest they've been is 32nd. They were there for a while. Their current ranking is 30th. Their playoff odds, 0%. So through the first 10 games, they were 4-4-2. They then went 2-4-2, or 2-6-2. Over the next 10 to end up 6-10-4. Then they won one of the next 10. They end up 7-19-4. Then 11-25-4 through 40 games, but they were playing better. They were 4-6 between game 30 and game 40, and they've been 4-4 since the 40 game mark. So they're playing well enough that they're spoiling the nights of some of the teams better than them that they're playing against, and they're proving that they're still making the effort. Players do. But they are rebuilding. Now, picking an MVP was not easy because honestly, some nights it's Stalock, some nights it's Mrazek. Kane's had his moments. Taves has had his moments. If I wanted to say consistently, it's probably Max Domi. Max Domi's probably been consistently their best player. This does say a lot about the fact the team's in a rebuild. Yes, it also says something about the fact that Kane and Taves are not the dominant players they were a few years back. But, the teammates, that's definitely had an effect. So Domi's the leading scorer with 14 goals, 21 assists, 35 points. And I'd be very surprised if he doesn't stay in Chicago past this season. Kane, 9 goals, 25 assists, 34 points for him overall. Again, for Kane, remarkable run for him as a Blackhawk, but he's likely going somewhere at the deadline. And when he does get traded, I would expect his performance offensively to get better. Taves, 14 goals, 14 assists, 28 points. I think he's had a nice bounce back after a really rough year for him last year. Radish, 14 goals, 10 assists, 24 points. Continues this tradition of players being jettisoned from Tampa and playing better elsewhere. Showing the amount of depth there is in the Tampa Bay organization. And then there's Seth Jones, 4 goals, 18 assists for 22 points. He's, of course, going to the All-Star game. And in the last couple of weeks, he's played like he should be in the All-Star game. He's had some of his best hockey as a Chicago Blackhawk. So maybe that bodes well for them. Of course, the contract will be discussed for a long time to come, but maybe it does bode well for them. Their tandem, when healthy, you have Mrazek, you have Stalock. Stalock's contract is expiring at the end of this season, so he may end up on the move. There's been discussions of whether or not he's going to go and where he's going to go. But for Stalock, I think he's had a decent season. To me, Stalock has always been a decent backup goaltender. I've been surprised at how often he gets moved around. And again, I'm not saying he's one of the best or that he's going to make you forget about some of the best backups in the league, but he can be a decent backup. Pending UFAs, we've talked about Kane, we've talked about Taves and whether or not they leave Chicago, and then do they leave Chicago and come back on cheaper deals? Athanasiou, worthy of note here, Athanasiou being brought in on a 1-year deal. I think he's played okay, but I don't think he's necessarily played well enough not to end up being rented out at the deadline. Domi, on the other hand, has. I would be very surprised if Domi ends up being moved at the trade deadline. I think he's sticking around in Chicago. Jack Johnson, one of the Johnsons, because they have 3 different Johnsons. Jack Johnson's the one with the expiring contract as a UFA. I don't know that he's played well enough to drum up a ton of interest, but I don't know very many in Chicago that have. Stalock's been mentioned, and then there's 2 on the IR currently. There's Jujhar Khaira. There's Jared Tenorti. Tenorti, I think, had good chemistry as with the Hawks under Luke Richardson. Richardson seemed to get some really good hockey out of him. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tenorti sticks around either. Khaira, we'll see. If he's healthy at the deadline, yeah, he could move, end up being traded. But I don't think there's a lot coming back. Obviously, Kane is the big fish here. He's the one that could fetch quite the return. But Chicago started their rebuild with last year's draft. They got some good picks in that draft as well. And so we're going to start seeing this team getting a lot younger next season and maybe after the deadline as well with the trading of guys like Kane and Taves. So it's a painful process going through, and it, obviously if they draft Bedard, That'll speed up the process a bit, but it can be rough going through a rebuild. That being said, Chicago does have the Stanley Cups to keep themselves happy. Their most recent being 2015. That's still recent enough that I don't know how many fans outside of Chicago are all that concerned that the team's going through a rebuild, but I have seen some concern about them ending up getting Bedard. But yeah, this is a team that's been towards the bottom of the standings for the last, what, 3-4 years? So yeah, this is a team that could use an infusion of talent in the guise of Bedard. But we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.